Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brittany Nelson, and on behalf of Caresoft Technology Corporation, I would like to welcome you to our Broadcom webinar, Sleeping with the Code, Automation Upgrade Training. When code sleeps, when code rests, when code works, you rest. My apologies. I'd like to introduce you to our speakers for today's presentation, Bob Schwartz, President of Robert Mark Technologies, and Gennaro Montano, Senior Consultant at Robert Mark Technologies. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to our first presenter of the day, Bob Schwartz.
Thank you, Brittany. Good morning for most. Good afternoon for some of you. My name is Bob Schwartz, as Brittany mentioned. I'm with Robert Mark Technologies. I'm going to go through a little bit of a few slides about who we are. We obviously got it. I know some of you may know Gennaro already, but some of you don't know Gennaro, and probably the rest of you don't know Robert Mark Technologies. And so we'll walk through it a little bit. Our goal in doing this is, and many more like this, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, is to make sure that we're enabling you with as much information as possible, with the ultimate goal to try to help you be as successful as possible with your Automic solution. Some of you that are on may be a part of our Cadence program. If you aren't, reach out to us and let us know, because it's a way that we can connect with you all. We have direct lines of contact with the Broadcom product management team, Broadcom support, and so forth, as well as even the Caresoft support folks. And so we know exactly what's coming down the pipe well before anybody else does. So the cadences are really helpful for us to meet with you, keep you up to speed, and so forth. So if you aren't on a cadence and you want to be, let us know. We also do a lot of blogs. We have a lot of articles that come out that we can provide to you via our website. So it's kind of the one-stop shop. So that's just one way. Another way in keeping you up to snuff on latest greatest is doing webinars such as the one you're going to see today. And again, the ultimate goal for anybody like Robert Mark Technologies who works with Broadcom clients is to make sure that we're doing everything possible to make you successful. So again, as I mentioned, that's what this is all about. One other thing to mention is I really appreciate you coming on today. You're going to find value in this session. We're going to do many more like it. And so at the end of the session, we're going to ask for Q&A. The Q&A is partially for you to provide questions to us so that we can answer them related to this particular topic, which is upgrading. But also, I would ask that you put in the Q&A session any kind of recommendations on something you want to see later on in down the road in terms of webinars. We did the same one for an Autosys one yesterday, and they provided a lot of really great feedback related to what they want to see in future webinars. So my challenge to you all is to do the same thing. So anyway, thank you for taking the time. Thank you for jumping on. Now here's our part where we establish credibility that the things that Gennaro and I are going to tell you, we know what we're talking about. So on this particular slide, you'll see we have many years of experience from a partnership perspective with both Broadcom and CA. We are a tier 1 reseller of their products under the workload automation umbrella. We also are an Expert Plus Advantage partner, which is a pretty esteemed title because you can only get it if your resources are certified and you have particular nights, which is the next part of this slide, which is the highest level you can attain in terms of status within Broadcom. So we have all of that. We have 25 plus years of mainframe and distributed experience. Now, if I took them all collectively and added in everybody's experience, we're over 200 years experience in the mainframe and distributed. So we know what we're talking about when it comes to either platform. We're full service expertise under all of the different products under the Broadcom umbrella and workload automation. But that doesn't just go from a tool set perspective, that also goes from a professional services perspective, where if we're helping folks with assessments to help them know what they need to do with their particular solution so that they can get more mature with it, whether it be we have software solutions like our ACE product, which we are eventually porting over to the Automic platform for lifecycle management. We do a plethora of different things. We have managed service offerings, so we use offshore and onshore different resources to be able to support our clients if they need some help from that perspective. So everything and anything under the sun related to all of the needs of our clients can be handled by us. And then the fourth bullet here is we have worked, and oh, by the way, I didn't really talk about me. I've been in this space for 25 years. I've worked with probably a couple thousand different clients in those years. And so I've worked with a lot of shops, even maybe some of the folks that are on this call. Our organization, though, we work with the biggest of the big and the smallest of the small and everything in between. We have worked in the largest shops in the world, and we've helped them with upgrades, we've helped them with conversions, we've helped them with consolidations, all of those kind of things. And even the smallest ones we've worked with to help them get more mature, grow their environments, leverage automation in all the different areas that they can do that. So, and then the last bullet on this particular slide, we do a lot of the things that I just mentioned are really the ultimate goal of reducing the cost of ownership from a workload automation perspective. And so again, as I mentioned, whether it be assessments, whether it be helping you convert from multiple tool sets down to one, that kind of thing. So we do a lot with the ultimate goal of helping to reduce the cost of ownership. Next slide, Gennaro. So I'm not going to go through all of the awards. There are a lot. And the only thing I'll point out from a award perspective is you can't get these rewards or awards if you're not doing the right thing with our clients. And so we really believe that, you know, we put the client first in everything that we do, and that's allowed us to get a lot of these awards. The last thing I'll point out on this particular slide is where I add the credibility of the things that we're going to tell you today. So on the bottom left, you'll see we've done 1,500 engagements. That grows exponentially month after month. We do a lot of work. We have many projects that are going on right now. We have a lot of Automic upgrades that are going on and a few slated. And so I'll get to why that's important that you're here today in the next slide. We also have about 775 upgrades, and that's where we get the major credibility, the things we're going to talk about today. We have not failed on any one of them. We've only backed out on one particular upgrade in all of the upgrades that we've done. And we're doing a lot of them. And a lot of that has to do with our methodology, which we'll talk a little bit about today. It has to do with our experience and so forth. Clients hire us because it's easy. They hire us because if it becomes not easy, they want the best there, helping them get out of that. And then the last thing, 150 conversions and 25 plus years in this space. So next slide, Gennaro. Okay, so there's a number of you folks that are on. I appreciate you coming on, as I mentioned earlier. At the end of this presentation or discussion or webinar, whatever you want to call it, we will answer your questions live. So you're going to post them in the Q&A session or the Q&A portion of this webinar. They will make that, I think it's available already. So as you get questions, you don't have to wait till the end to put your questions in. You can put them in as we go, and then we'll answer them in the order that you fire them out there. The last part of this particular slide is we're asking you to stick around. You should do that anyway because it's really good content, and we think you will anyway. However, if you wanted a reason to stay, we're going to provide you with a first ever opportunity you won't want to miss. So stick around. That's at the very end of the presentation. And again, you want to stick around for the Q&A session anyway, because there's a lot of questions that your peers are going to ask that you're going to probably have the same kind of question. So next slide, please. Okay, I got one more slide to go, and then I believe I turned it over to Gennaro. So Automic version 21 goes end of support in September 30th, 2025. So that may seem like that's months away, which it is, but those months go very quickly. And so my point of that is we're embarking on summer, which basically means there's a lot of vacations, and it's very difficult to get things done within each organization because people are on vacation. So you want to start moving, if you haven't already, to think about upgrading. And so if you go beyond September 30th, what happens at that point, if you get an issue or encounter a problem that you can't figure out yourself, and you go to open a ticket, the Broadcom or Caresoft will come to you and say, we can't support you, you're on an unsupported product, and therefore you need to reach out to Robert Mark Technologies and they will help you, but you will have to do a formal services engagement in which to do so. And so To avoid that, there's a few things you can do. One, upgrade it yourself, which you can certainly do. Number two, contact us and we will help you get upgraded. We're very quick and efficient on doing it because, again, as I mentioned already, we've done a lot of them and we continue to do them. I think Gennaro probably has 5 or 6 upgrades in the span of the last few months and going forward. And so he himself are doing a lot, so are other resources. So we're very fast and efficient, as fast and efficient as we can be. And we're very fantastic at mitigating risk. The third thing you can do is to contact RMT and get an extended support. So if it goes beyond September 30th, the way in which you can still get support is to get an extended support agreement. Yes, there is a charge for that, but maybe that's better if you have other priorities and you can't get it upgraded in that time frame. The next best thing is to make sure you're supported, but yes, you may have to open up your billfold for that. So that is it. Next slide, I believe. Before we start engaging and me turn it over to Gennaro, we do have a poll for you all to answer. And so I'll walk through the poll if Brittany can fire it up there for you. All right, so you're going to see it pop up. It's a pop-up, meaning it's not going to be connected to this actual web browser. It should be separate from that. So if it's on your left screen or right screen or middle screen, just look for it, you'll see it. So Automic webinar poll. What version of Automic are you currently on? And so essentially, Gennaro, what are the couple of answers that they should provide here? What versions would they have to provide?
You can provide any like major versions that you're on. So 12.3, for example, or 21. Anything really, just trying to get a sense of anything under the version, the current supported version, which is version 24.
Gotcha. Okay. And then what version of Automic are you moving to? What are a couple of the answers that are GA versions that they should look at, Gennaro?
For what version of Automic would you be going to?
Yeah.
Really, ideally, we'd like to see anything within the version 24 suite. So you can start with version 24 base, 24.0, 24.1, all the way through 24.4. And that's ideal. We'll get into a little bit more as to why that's the expected numbers that we'd like to see here when we get a little bit more into the technical aspects.
Excellent. Thank you, Gennaro. And then the last question, will you be upgrading soon? If so, when? One of the things is if you scroll your mouse down, you'll see there's 2 other questions. So 0 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9, 9 to 12, 12 plus, yes, but not sure when, and no. So we'll give you guys another minute to enter in your answers there. And then at that point, I will turn it over to Gennaro. He will do some slides and go through the demonstration, and then he will turn it back over to me, and then I'll tie things up and set you free. All right, I think we've had enough time. And oh, by the way, you can still answer it throughout the presentation and the conversation in the webinar itself, because it stays up the whole time because it's a separate pop-up window. So if you don't know the answer right now and you're doing a little bit of digging, you can come back to it and answer it. Okay, with that, I will turn it over to Gennaro, who will walk through the rest.
Thank you, Bob. Hello, everyone. My name is Gennaro Montano, as you've heard. Some of you have worked with you before, so it's good to see you guys again. Others, look forward to working with you in the future. So what we'll just talk about here is we'll highlight some more of that technical information as it's related to that release strategy and why with that poll we're asking the questions that we're asking. The reason why we're asking those questions is because if you do not know, version 21 of Automic is end of support this year. It is end of support this year in September. We are hosting this to provide you with some information and hopefully get you started so that way before that time comes you don't have any issues with opening tickets, things like that, and your environment stays up and healthy. So as I said, end of support version 21. The new version is version 24. That is now going to follow as per Broadcom's release schedule. they'll now be changing the numbering system or the identifier of the version based off of the year that the major version is released. So version 24 came out in 2024. That will be the strategy going forward. Version 24 will be within its normal support cycle through 2029. So you do have a good chunk of support coverage once you get to version 24. With our upgrade strategy, or one of our upgrade strategies and approaches here at RMT, is always to go to not the most immediate latest version, but the latest version -1, or what we call N-1. So the newest version, but the previous newest version. In this case right now, the newest version is 24.4. That just came out 3-4 weeks ago. And so our recommendation will be moving to version 24.3. There are some specific reasons why we do that. Some of those easiest ones are just when you have a newest release of a product, there hasn't necessarily been enough time to necessarily QA everything, and there may be enhancements or features that are being added within those newest versions that haven't had proper life cycle yet to be able to become like fully stable. So there may be new things that are being introduced with the platform that could cause some issues with your environment. So we just always recommend at least staying up current with the 24 and staying within that version 24 suite. All right, so on this side, we'll talk about what's in the newest release. So we'll talk about some of the various differences between version 24 and version 21. Some of those key differences between the two. One of the biggest differences within version 24 is the database correlation change. So as part of the product, they have moved the code set from the legacy version to UTF-8 code set, which allows you a little bit larger table space or record space within your database columns, and it is also more generally accepted. So all in all, it does end up adding a little bit more ease of use to the database within the Automic product. It also helps organize and clear up some things that were previous issues with the AWI, some congestion within the database. Because of that change, there are some specific upgrade paths that have to be chosen and some decisions that have to be made that are relevant specifically to migrating to version 24. So if you were on version 12.3, or if you're on version 21, or if you're on 12.1, any other older versions, to get to version 24, your upgrade path is going to look slightly different than it would in the traditional sense. One of those big differences is with version 12, as you guys know, it was released that you could start performing the zero downtime upgrade procedure, which allowed for that flexibility within your environment to allow you to be able to migrate your systems while reducing your downtime. Unfortunately, with the database change in version 24, the zero downtime upgrade process no longer works, specifically when you're migrating from something lower than version 24 to version 24. Once you get to version 24, the ZDU then is still workable. You can still use it. So if you upgrade to version 24.1, for example, and you want to go to version 24.5 in the future, you can use the ZDU process to then follow that normal upgrade path. Another major difference between version 21, and I wouldn't really say this is necessarily a product difference, but it is a product ownership difference, is Broadcom has started providing a software as a service offering. That SaaS offering for Automic runs on version 24. So you do have that option as well when considering deciding how to manage your environment going forward in the future. So there is the normal on-prem solution, and then there is version 24. We'll go through some of the differences between the SaaS version and the version 24 on-prem solution in the next bullet point. Another key difference between version 21 and version 24 are really enhancements to your user interface. So within version 24, as the AWI has continued to be enhanced since its introduction in version 12, it's been enhanced even further for ease of use. So things like searching your help, things like right-clicking and your navigation are a little bit more user-friendly, and you have some more interactions you can do within the AWI. We'll walk through a live demo in a little bit here, just so we can compare the two different versions of the AWI. However, while there are enhancements to the AWI and enhancements to the REST API endpoints, for the most part, generally, the version 24 AWI does not look vastly different than it did within version 21 or within version 12.3. The layouts are relatively the same structure, and so for that, you have your opportunities of just it's easier to jump into version 24 because you can just there's not massive changes, so there's not a huge learning curve that you have to adjust to. So some of those key differences between the Automic on-prem solution and the SaaS offering, those are gonna come mostly in the form of your end user management and your overall system health. So obviously with the SaaS offering, you no longer have to manage the automation engine core system. You don't have to worry about setting up any type downtimes for upgrades or anything like that. These are all handled by the Broadcom, by your SaaS provider. There is also a few differences. So with the SaaS offering runs the Kubernetes version of the Automic solution. So it runs within a Kubernetes cluster, which allows for that flexibility and that redundancy for failovers. And really within SaaS offering, like traditional SaaS offerings, what you're really looking for is your management of your schedules and your jobs, but not necessarily your back-end components. With the SaaS offering, your agent authentication does look slightly different because it is that Kubernetes edition. So there is some different actions that you have to take with the Kubernetes setup when authenticating your agents. There's some specific actions that have to be taken within the AWI. However, once again, still accessing the AWI or the Automic Web Interface all looks the same as your on-prem solution. And even though it's a SaaS offering as compared to an on-prem solution, once again, the interface does not change a lot with its layout or anything like that. It's still the same AWI. Process assembly still exists. Process monitoring still exists, so on and so forth. You can still do your searching and everything like that. It's really just that back-end administrative role that you no longer have to worry about. All right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to jump into a little live demo. So we'll show version 21 and version 24. We'll kind of walk through the AWI just so we can get a sense of like how it looks and how it feels and stuff like that. And then what we will jump into is that upgrade path that's available to you. So we're going to showcase one of the upgrade strategies that are available, and then we'll discuss afterwards the other one and the pros and cons of both. So here we have a version 21 environment. So we can see here we're running version 21.02. This layout should seem relatively familiar. We still have our process assembly, our process monitoring, the My Catalog, and the administration page. user information on the left, and your file explorer on the so user information on the right, file explorer on the left. One of the upgrade paths, and what we'll be showing casing today, is there is a package that's available that contains a bunch of various different objects that allow us to be able to run our database migration through Automic. This helps us because this allows us to essentially copy over our database without having to shut down our legacy system until we're absolutely ready. And it allows us to run a conversion on our database collations through the workflow itself and through some SQL scripts as well. This package is available on the Broadcom marketplace, and it is fully supported as well. When beginning your first database migration, there are a few prerequisites that have to be decided. Well, really with any upgrade migration. A couple of things that need to be decided is what version you're on, what version are you going to, and anything in between that. So not only what version of product are you on Automic version X, and are you wanting to go to Automic version Y, but you also need to consider what operating systems you're on. So what hosts are you currently running these products or these solutions on? Are you on Windows 2016 and you're wanting to move to Linux? And if you're wanting to move to Linux, are you wanting to run on, CentOS, or are you wanting to run on Solaris? Like whatever it may be. All of those decisions are going to play into what upgrade path is going to be ultimately best for your environment. If you are deciding to move from the same operating system type and the same database system type, generally your approach is always going to be running this database migration package. There are a few gotchas with some of the various different versions as well. For example, within SQL, your source SQL database has to be running on SQL 2017 at minimum. So beyond that, some more of those prerequisites that you would need to do is you would need to, as it comes to running the database migration package, not you yourself, but a DBA has to build out your database that's available to you, and you need to specify whatever code set you may be using, if you're using Oracle, or correlation type if you're using SQL. After that database is built and the user has been assigned, you can then move to your source system, import your database package, and then you can begin to run your setup files. So how that would look is once you install the packages, you'll notice you get a whole bunch of objects. You'll get various different actions. You get the app data, and then you'll also get the package itself. So we'll just move into that. The first thing you're going to want to do is go into the setup objects folder. In here, there'll be two objects in here. They're connection objects. This allows us to build our connections to our database. So you don't have to worry about building like a local ODBC connection string or anything like that. What you'll be running this through is you'll be running it through any database agent that you have currently available within your environment, provided that it can form the correct connection, right? If I had an Oracle database agent, I wouldn't try running a SQL migration against it. So you'd fill out that information when that time comes. Once that is completed, you would then move back and you would go ahead and run your UTF migration start. You'll see once you go ahead and start executing this, it's going to prompt us for some information. This is going to be relevant once again to the database type that you're using. So you'd specify what agent you want to run against, and you'll fill out some various different information here. Run mode. This is going to be relevant to the various different stages of the workflow that you're executing in. The reason why this exists is a benefit to you as an end user. So there are three different run modes. There's 0, which is initial, there's 2, which is running, and then there's 3, which is final. They represent the different stages of your migration process and really allow for a smoother transition from your legacy system to your new system. So you'll see right here, we're starting in run mode 0. This is your initial load. And what this does is this copies all of your existing data from your source system and stages it in your database, in your newly created UTF-8 database. The reason why this is a benefit to you is because this requires no system downtime. You can run this initial stage whenever you like, and you can run it as many times as you like. It has no impact to your Automic legacy system as you run. Then once we get into running, the next stage will be the 1. That's the running stage. That stage is meant to be ran to cover any delta. So let's say you import the migration package on, Monday of this week. You run it that first time, and then for whatever reason, there's a delay within when you're able to get back in. Maybe your CAB approval for your go live has been pushed off, so you have to wait a few weeks, and there's been a delta of data where new updates have come in past the last time this workflow is ran. That's exactly what that running mode is for, is to cover that delta of data. So it's going to update your existing package. That run can also be executed during your system uptime. So it also does not require system downtime. So you're able to cover your delta while your legacy system continues to run. And then the final stage, that's going to be that end all of the legacy system. And that one doesn't require that you shut down the system while it's executing, but you will be shutting down the system after the completion of the final run. You'll then put in your email address. This is going to send you some post shutdown steps to be performed. And then this is relevant to what your database is. So if you're running this migration pack and your database and your new database instance exists within a different database, you need to create a link between the two. This is how they sync and how we create this bridge of data that gets carried over. The zeros mean that the database instances both are installed within the same database, just using different schema. So we'd go ahead and then hit submit. That's going to start executing. And then as that runs, if I, that's right. You'll notice it has some various different actions that it takes, and it runs through an if workflow. Once this completes, it then imports all of your data. Within that final stage, I don't know why this isn't loading. Once it's within that final stage, you then shut down your legacy system. There'll be 2 SQL scripts that get provided to you through an email. Those SQL scripts will have to be run by a database administrator. What they essentially do is they unpackage the zipped up, transported data that this workflow creates. And then they also grab the current MQ tables of your environment. So they want to make sure that your system is down. Once you do that, you then are able to go through all of the normal steps within your version 24 environment. So you can log in to version 24. You would then run your database load and unload database load utility to upgrade your system, just as you've done in the past with previous upgrades. So after you run that database migration, it's really just, as normal, for every other upgrade. You're still coming in to utility, you're running your load utility, you're selecting your data load file. It then runs an upgrade mode, upgrades it to version 24. And then you're able to start your system. So you just have to adjust your INI files, turn that on. And then once you move into that system, you should be able to move to process assembly. and you should see all of your data still existing within your new environment. So if we look here, we should see version 24. So we're in version 24.2 now. Some of the benefits to doing this migration package is not only does it carry all of your object definitions, but it also brings over all of your historical execution records. So if you have anything like that has ran multiple times a day, or any reports that you may want to check, that all of that information will get carried over within this migration package. That is true even for running jobs. So let's say, for example, for whatever reason, you forgot to maybe shut down your queue and you have something executing. Within your new system, those things that are scheduled to run would still be scheduled to run. So if we had a schedule object within here, we would then see that available within our process monitoring. Another benefit to running the migration package is, once again, since we're doing that database copy and that translation of the full database, things like passwords and stuff like that do not have to be re-entered. If you have LDAP configured, for example, or any other like authentication method, if you're using single sign-on or Active Directory, none of that has to be reconfigured at all. It's all available to you once you log in. And really, once you start up that version 24 environment, you're ready to go. There isn't any other extra work that has to be done. We're just going to jump back into the presentation there. So as we talked about, there are a few different upgrade options that you can choose, and there are even a few different upgrade options within the execution of the migration package. But really, the two options that are available to you are utilizing the migration package that is available and running that, or you can also do sort of more the really old school version, which is you can run the database load and unload utilities to export your database objects. Now, when do those work? Why would you do one versus the other? The reasons why you would choose the database migration package is, like we said, some of the pros are you get all of your execution data, you get all of your objects, you get all of your password information, you get all of your configuration information, but it is a little bit limited. So for things like database types, you are bound to the same database type. You cannot move from one database type to another using the migration package. Depending on your version of Automic, if you're on version anything older than 12.3, for example, the migration package is unfortunately not compatible with those lower versions of Automic. Depending on your database version, it might not work with the migration package as well. Some of the cons to running that migration package, continuing on from what we just discussed, is not only are there some constraints around when you can run it, but there is also the factor of time. So when you execute the migration package, because it is exporting all of the database records that exist within your database, your length of exportation increases based off of your execution records and your historical retention. So obviously, like, the more objects you have running and the more history that you keep, the longer the export process is going to take through the migration package. This only becomes an issue when you consider that final stage of running. So for the first two initial stages, it's not really going to matter. And in fact, we would use that as sort of a baseline run to get our timeline for your final execution. So that way, when you take it to cab and get your approvals and everything, you know how long the process is going to take. But because of that, you do have a more extended downtime. Now, the other upgrade strategy, as we talked, is more the traditional like database unload and database load. So using the Automic utilities that are provided to you as well. Some of the pros to that are when you execute that, you have a little bit more flexibility within your database types and things like that. You're not bound to any version constraints or anything like that. You can really just run the unload utility and you can run the load utility, and you can import them as long as you're able to move that data file. Some of the cons to that are, once again, you're leaving all of that like historical or that execution data behind. So you're only grabbing your object definitions. This includes configuration information as well. So if you have anything like LDAP and stuff like that would be configured, but you would still need to re-add your passwords for like that LDAP sync option to be available. Also schedule information. Once that comes over, you then would have to re-enable those schedule objects. So there is a little bit more upfront work that has to be considered. You need to look at gaps within your schedule to be able to determine what would be the optimal time for a go live situation, and then how much effort is going to be needed to re-enable those objects as they exist. As I discussed a little bit earlier, unfortunately for that major version change between any lower versions and version 24, the ZDU feature is unavailable, which is why there is some of that manual consideration that has to be taken. Once you get into version 24, the ZDU process then becomes available and you're able to run all of your upgrades in parallel again. So with those database changes that have come, as we talked a little bit, when can the migration pack be used? When can't it be used? And what can be taken to either allow you to run the migration package, or what other options can you take to upgrade and still get to version 24, even if you can't use the migration package. Really, that option is going to be just unloading that database. Obviously, the preference is always going to be that migration package. It's a little bit less work for all of us. It's tailored a little bit nicer to support the migration and expands all of our databases without us necessarily having to be database administrators within our own system. So for this last slide, I want to just thank you all for your time today. I am going to turn it over to Bob, who's going to kind of walk through this a little bit. And then if there is any other technical aspects that I find you may hear from me again, I might pop in and out. But for the most part, we'll have Bob kind of finish and wrap this up. Yeah, thank you guys for listening. All right, Bob, over to
Great
you.
job, Gennaro. I will tell you, you have 5 questions sitting in your queue, so you probably will be talking again, but that's quite all right. All right, so tips and tricks or best practices. I'll go through this slide pretty quickly because 5 questions may take all of our time. Well, 6, 7 questions, so I'm moving really quickly through this slide. I'll summarize it this way. The overarching theme around any kind of upgrades with all these workload automation solutions, obviously Automic being one of them, is of course, if you don't have experience, utilize somebody like RMT to help you. We all know that these solutions are the backbone of IT, and I always say this, these solutions may have an application that is basically a massively critical application, but in its own right, standalone, it is imperative to the organization that it operates the way it's expected. Take that and put all the other applications and wrap them into Automic. Now Automic becomes exponentially more critical because it handles all these applications. So it's very imperative. Yes, Gennaro walked through it. Yes, Gennaro made it look super easy. And but if you're doing an upgrade once every 2-3 years, we do them all the time. If you need help, then leverage RMT to help you. The second thing is understand the nuances, any objects that need to be carried over, folder structures and things like that. Make sure you do your homework. And so that also coincides with the next bullet, which is make a plan of attack. We have an upgrade strategy document that we use for every single one of them. And it's gone through so many iterations that it's very squeaky clean. And if you're going to go this alone, make sure you have one too. Make sure you come up with, what do I do if there's an issue? How do I back out? What do I need to do? Who do I need to engage? All those different kind of things. So there's a plethora of things to think about related to upgrade strategies. Make sure you do. The fourth thing is make those critical upgrade decisions early. Understand which version of OS, DB, Java methods, what kind of version you're going to go to with Automic. Don't do it on the fly, right? That's what the upgrade strategy documentation is all about. Make sure you do your homework. And then the last one, complete all the prerequisites before you do an install or upgrade or any of that. That kind of seems common sense, but sometimes that's missed. So we wanted to make sure that we provided that overview. So again, I went through this a lot quicker than I normally would, but I want you all to get your questions answered. So with that, let's flip to the last slide before we go to the questions, if you will. So I made a promise to you all, if you stuck with us. Now there's folks on this call that leverage RMT all the time to help them with their upgrades. Thank you so much for that. Obviously that means we're doing a good job. So thank you for your repeat business. However, some of you may be on here that are kind of anticipating whether you need help or not. If you decide that you're going to have RMT help, I will tell you, there's a lot of folks that are having RMT help them with their upgrades. If you've attended this and you actually email us and email us at info@robertmarktech.com and put on the subject line top stack priority, or just simply mention that you attended the webinar, then we will move you to the upgrade stack at the top of the stack or the heap. And we will get you in and get you going first and foremost. That's obviously assuming you want to go first and foremost. So thank you for showing up for it. Thank you for sticking it out. Your reward is if you're leveraging RMT and you want to get to the top, then email us at info@robertmarktech.com. Also, please email us at that as well if you have an idea on what the webinars should look like going forward. If you want us to do something on AAI, or you want us to do something else on Automic, maybe an integration. In the last session yesterday, they wanted us to do integrations with, I don't remember exactly what they were, but there was a couple of them that were really key that they wanted us to do. Feel free to email us or throw it in the chat, in the question and answer chat. Thank you again for attending. I'm going to go through the questions. I'll ask them, and then if I'm able to answer them, probably not, then I will do so. If I cannot, then that's why I have the big gun here, Gennaro, who will chime in and answer. So first question is, how can we proactively, efficiently plan for some of the action packs that may not be supported in v.24 anymore? For example, the ServiceNow integration action pack workaround would be to replicate, create new code to make it work. But I was curious if there's a better, easier way to handle this. All right, Gennaro, that's a you question, not me. And you're on mute. So there you go.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So this is part of what Bob was referring to in this previous slide a little bit when we talk about this plan of attack and making these critical decisions early. So one of the things you'd want to look at is your various different integration types that you're using, right? What do you currently use? Is it still currently supported? And if it's not supported, what workarounds can be taken to still have the same functionality, even though the pack may not be supported? And that is all stuff you would consider within those early stages of that upgrade beginning. So as far as for the ServiceNow integration as it relates to directly, what I can say about action packs in general is if they exist on the marketplace and they're created by the community, those tend to be locked to their specific versions. If you have used them in the past, while they may work for whatever you need, unfortunately, as the question states, what you would have to do to be able to change that pack, to be able to make it work within the newer system, is you would have to update that code yourself. There is, however, packs that are available on the marketplace as well that are supported by Broadcom, and those packs are managed. So that does also play into another question, the question right below. Kenneth's asking about the UTF-8 migration package. whenever they are Broadcom supported packages, they do maintain them. So if there are ever any issues with them, you're able to open support cases to work through those issues, and they do enhance and develop those as they continue to support those packages as well.
Super. Okay, thank you, Gennaro. So the next question is, and again, oh, by the way, if there's a more deep question that you have, you're probably better off emailing Gennaro or info@robertmarktech.com. But Kenneth mentioned something that I think is for anybody who's on here that's doing an install, I think it's more of an FYI. And it basically said, we created a v.24 environment last year, ran into the issues running the pck.atomic_utf8_db pack, I think. I don't know, I don't know how to say it, but basically, if you were doing that and you ran into that issue, he also posted the fix for it. He had to manually adjust this particular setting. And so I think he was doing it as a favor to anybody else on this call that might be encountering the same thing. Am I right, Gennaro?
Yeah, you are.
Okay. All right. The next one is, if there is an issue in package of migration pack, will Broadcom support via ticket? I kind of know a partial answer to that. Generally speaking, they don't support upgrade type activities until, say, for example, you were going live and at that point in time, you wanted to have them available in case there were major issues. But I think as it relates to helping with upgrades, they tend to push towards companies like Robert Mark to help with that type of thing. Am I right, Gennaro?
Yeah, you are. If there are any issues, I just want to just go a little bit further though. If there are any functional issues with the upgrade package, because it is managed by Broadcom, and we identify like something like what Kenneth was pointing out earlier, something that maybe needs to change or maybe needs to be updated, yes, we can still get either Broadcom or Caresoft support to help with that.
Okay. Roman asks, are there any experience values for the performance of the pack's initial run on MSQL? Always on cluster for a database size about 500 gigabytes. How long would the approximate runtime for the initial turn be?
So for the initial turn, I mean, there are always variables to running any of these just based off of like network connectivity and everything like that. But the short answer is yes, there are some initial quotes that are available to you to kind of give you a sense of the time it may take. And for a database that size on SQL, it's going to take roughly, it's about 45 minutes for every 100 gigs. So you could roughly estimate that at however long that may be, right? 4 or 5 hours. But obviously that's just a rough estimate. The best way to understand that time is to run that initial workflow to begin with, because as I said, it doesn't impact your legacy system performance, because it's really just creating a zip file and it's creating it in an empty database. It's not touching any of your current records.
You know, Ahmed asks a question about what is the path to go to SaaS from on-prem? And quite interesting. Everybody, if you get a chance, go to robertmarktech.com and go to our basically our blogs. What's it under again, Cami? Let me make sure I go to it first. If you go to our Insights Hub underneath there, under blog, and then you'll go to Automic Resource Hub. If you go to there, you can actually find a whole session on moving to SaaS from Automic. So it's basically, let's see, if you go to Automic Resource Hub and then you scroll down, you'll see it's called Clash of the Titans, RMT versus Broadcom. But the reality is it's all about Automic SaaS. I was a part of that presentation, and really it's discussions with Kai from product management about what does it look like to move to Automic SaaS from on-prem. And although we can answer that right now, short answer, that's going to go into much more detail. And oh, by the way, it's a great place to go for you all to get a lot of information about what's coming out. Anything we get from Broadcom, we post on there. Anything we get from Gartner, industry standards, any of that. So if you're not sure where to go to get everything, that's where you would go. So again, robertmarktech.com/ or go to Insights, and then under blog, go to Automic Resource Hub. In fact, I can probably post it right here so you can all hit it. It'll be under your chat. So anyway, Gennaro, real quickly, what's the path to go from on-prem to SaaS?
Yeah, so the path to go from on-prem to the SaaS offering, unfortunately, because it is a SaaS offering and the database is hosted by Broadcom, the database migration package is unavailable within that instance. So what that path is going to look like, and there's a lot more detailed information, as Bob hinted at, not only within the blog, but when you start first engaging with the SaaS team at Broadcom, they send you several different welcome emails that kind of outline in a lot more detail the various different steps that have to be performed and how you do that. But essentially what you'll be doing is you'll be unloading your database. You'll be providing it to a SharePoint site within Broadcom. Broadcom will then take that data, they'll load it into your system. And then from there, it's management as usual.
Excellent. Okay, and then we probably have time for one more question. We are upgrading from version 21 to version 24.4. We will now be considering 24.3 based on this webinar, which is fantastic. That's what this is about. We don't have analytics on version 21. Are we able to add analytics directly on version 24? Do we need to add it to version 21 first before upgrading to version 24?
Yeah, that's another good question. You can add your analytics directly on version 24. If for whatever reason you maybe had something on version 21 that you wanted to keep within version 24, then that would be the only instance where you'd have to have it existing first within that legacy system to have it be carried over. But the analytics, like setting up the analytical dashboards within Automic, is still follows the same type of installation process as it did in previous versions for version 24.
Excellent. Ron says, make sure to clean up the database as much as possible. And then Rebecca says, when the engine gets upgraded, the agents will also need to be upgraded, correct?
That is correct in the sense that you would ideally want to plan your upgrades to account for your agents being upgraded as well, just because you want them to all fall under that support umbrella. But it is not required in the
There is
sense that,
backward compatibility, right?
yep, exactly. So there's backwards compatibility within version 24, just as there is within other versions of Automic. So with the introduction of version 21, they introduced the TLS aspect and that whole secure communication and changing that communication process from the legacy communication processes to the Java communication processes and running that communication through TLS. That still exists within version 24. So the connection options are still the same. If you have anything that's 21 and newer, you can connect via the JCP. If you have anything that's older than 21, you can also install the TLS gateway to connect to your various different lower agents, or you can start up any legacy CPs that you may want to.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody. I know, Brittany, you're going to close this up, but really appreciate everybody jumping on. And thank you for spending your time with us today. Brittany?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you both. Gennaro, if you could just go to, there's two slides. There's a contact us slide. There we go. Perfect. All right. So thank you again, Bob and Gennaro, for being with us this afternoon. I want to thank all of our participants who joined us today. We hope this webinar has been helpful for you and your organization. If you have any further questions or would like to request more information, please feel free to contact us via the information on the slide. Thank you and have a great day.